The tiny man from nowhere came for her dead uncle. In the parched, unforgiving landscape of rural Texas, where the echoes of slavery still reverberate beneath the soil, where the scars of the cat-o'-nine tails were still fresh, and the people were weak and tired from the sheer volume of their blood shed on the land. A place where the people are a living testament to the courage of those shackled by the legacy of abuse and poverty. A place where the promise of freedom bore the heavy cost of segregation. A small Negro town struggled against the oppressive weight of a dark history too bitter to forget. Within this community, every face told a story of unrelenting hardships and quiet resilience. A people determined to rebuild their lives despite the chains of injustice that still lingered in both law and custom. Among the hardships, there lived a young man. In his eye, the fire of ambition warred with the shadow of despair. His life was hardened by poverty and fueled by a restless ambition that could not be quenched by the meager prospects offered by a segregated society. As the meager opportunities dried up, his mind turned to ancient whispered folklore, one where with the correct amount of desperation, a man could willingly barter with the supernatural and give up his soul for the elusive promise of wealth and dignity. Repulsed by the direction of his thoughts, the young man recoiled. But there seemed no way out of this relentless cycle of deprivation. A terrible secret barely whispered among the elders said that sometimes, in moments of extreme despair, one might dare to negotiate, a soul trading with forces way beyond human reckoning. This young man, driven by that desperate need to escape his predetermined fate, resolved that he could no longer live that way and vowed to try his luck with the very devil himself. And thus, one night under a moon that cast long, trembling shadows over the barren fields and crowded shacks housing pain, he set about performing the unholy ritual. In a grim, clandestine ceremony, the young man stood at the center where 4 roads meet, bucket in his trembling hands. He had boiled a black cat, a creature whose very name, color, and fur had long been seen as a symbol of mystery and ill omen. And with that grim determination in mind, he extracted a wishbone from the terrible, viscous, unsettling, foul-smelling broth using nothing but his teeth. As he stood under the darkness of night, he chanted words that seemed to blur the line between incantation and madness. Each syllable reverberated with the intense pain and defiance of a people who had nothing left to lose. In that moment of forbidden communion, the young man sealed his pact, exchanging the innocence of his soul for the promise of unimaginable wealth. As the years unfolded, the transformation was as dramatic as it was bitter. The once haggard youth became a man of opulent tastes, a wealthy, dignified figure amidst a community that had long been denied such fortunes. He lived in a grand house, and his every possession was a monument to the cost of his ambition. Yet behind the gilded exterior, a subtle decay had taken root. The emptiness behind his eyes seemed to haunt him about the soul that had been traded away with each passing day. The wealth he amassed, though dazzling, carried with it the inescapable weight of a bargain struck with the forces of darkness, an ever-present reminder that fortune won through treachery rarely remains free of its consequences. Time, as it always does, crept mercilessly forward. Eventually, the man succumbed to the ravages of old age and, upon his demeanor etched the deep scars of a life lived on a razor's edge between fortune and damnation. In keeping with the customs of the time, where the bodies of those once enslaved were treated with a mournful separation from the dominant society, his body was returned to his family home for the final rites. The mortuary traditions demanded that even in death, the legacy of bondage be observed. The deceased lay exposed in the family room, a silent testament to both a hard-won freedom and a lingering specter of a past never fully left behind. On the 3rd day, as sorrow mingled with the quiet murmur of remembrance, a figure emerged, a very short, impeccably dressed man whose appearance defied explanation. His arrival was neither heralded by fanfare nor questioned by those present. Rather, it was as if his coming was preordained by the very laws of fate. With a courteous nod and a tilted hat, the tiny man approached the coffin. Stretching his neck with an eerie deliberation, he peered inside as though reading the last secrets of a life spent in duality. The expression that crossed his weathered face was one of cold approval, a silent acknowledgement that the debt, long overdue, was finally ready to be collected. Without warning, the tiny man climbed the step stool, lifting the dead body with a strength that belied his stature. In one fluid, unsettling motion, he hoisted the corpse over his shoulder and disappeared through the back door into the shining light of the day, leaving the mourners in a state of frozen disbelief and shock. The mourners' paralyzed response to the theft of the body is laden with collective guilt and resignation. It is as if, in that moment, the entire community recognized that the legacy of exploitation and the moral debts incurred over generations could not simply be buried with the dead. They understood that the bizarre theft was a manifestation, that some debts, especially those paid in the currency of a soul, are inescapable, and that fate, no matter how well cloaked in mortal achievements, always comes calling in the end.